What's up, Nets fans? Welcome back to the Brooklyn Buzz podcast presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, on the Brooklyn Buzz, my guy, Jack, giving us that Australian flavor. What's up, Jack?
I'm very well, Nicholas. We've done an outlet. We're on the Buzz. You know, can't do anything better on a Sunday than chatting hoops.
Yeah, Jack said it. We just recorded the outlet. We had an OTG meeting before that, so we're ready to go, warmed up. We're going to talk Nets and their Mexico City trip. We'll talk a little bit Okafor. We did release a pod about the trade a few days ago, so check that out. But as always, you can listen to the Brooklyn Buzz on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, and OTGBasketball.com. But let's get right into it, Jack. We'll switch it up today. We'll start with the latest game, and then we'll move into the positive. So we'll start with the Heat loss. Obviously, the Nets played 2 games in Mexico City. They won the first one against OKC. They lost the second one against the Heat. They looked a little bit gassed in that game. Close game throughout. The Heat pulled away in the fourth quarter. You know, just the energy seemed to be a real issue. 3-point shooting, a lack of forced turnovers. But what really stuck out to you as the major issue for the Nets' loss to the Heat?
I think the ability to be able to adjust, Nick. The Miami defense really amped up, late in that second quarter and continued in the second half. And our ability to just create any offense was just, pretty pitiful. We scored 36 points in the second half, which was our lowest total of the season, 19 in the third, 17 in the last. So there was just, no flow to our offense. And that's one thing that Kenny always speaks about, flow and rhythm. And there was certainly some of that in the first half, which was a bit back and forth. It was quite an entertaining game. But in that second half, Miami, who was known as being quite a great defensive outfit in terms of their coaching, especially with their expulsion. But we just couldn't cope with guys like James Johnson, Goran Dragic. That they just, hurt us too much.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the Miami adjusted. I think they did a great job making life a lot more difficult for Caris LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie. Like I mentioned to you off air, the Nets don't have a ton of playmakers, a ton of guys that can create, and those are 2 of the main guys in the team. And a lot of the time, Kenny has to only leave one of them on the floor, so it makes life a lot easier for Heat. Like you said, Spoelstra's a great coach. He adjusted. And I think the lack of energy, being shorthanded with a Trevor Booker trade, Okafor and Stauskas not being here, playing in the high altitude, I think that definitely had an impact. Sarah Kustoff and Ryan Ruocco definitely mentioned it a few times. So what were your thoughts on the energy level and having to play 2 games in Mexico City within 3 days in such, close proximity and at that high altitude that the Nets weren't used to?
Yeah, DeMarc Hell made mention of it post-game, and he was saying how we pride ourselves on our conditioning. We trained all summer for it. It's going to happen. So I don't see it as much of an excuse. I think they just played better basketball than us. We had a day off in between. Yes, losing Booker, a rotation piece. Joe Harrison was out with illness in the Heat game as well. So we were down to 9 or 10 guys, healthy guys. And, it certainly hurts. And there were some lineup rotations that I think as well from Kenny. When we had like Acy out there with Zeller, there was just some weird lineups that I didn't really feel. Especially because when Acy doesn't, I think you mentioned on your Twitter page, when Acy doesn't make shots, he doesn't have much value to the Nets team. So if he's not on, then give his minutes to a Rondae, who at least can be out there for defensive purposes. I think the fatigue factor was a bit overblown.
I think the fatigue factor from the altitude was a bit overblown, but I think the fatigue factor from playing, having a shorthanded amount of guys impacted them a little bit more.
Yeah,
obviously they've been dealing with injuries all year long too. We don't even mention this D'Angelo Russell, Jeremy Lin. Dinwiddie's playing a lot more minutes than he's ever played in his career, really. And you could say the same for Caris LeVert because he's used to being banged up. So a lot of these guys aren't used to it. And I think, the Heat are a physical team. OKC's a physical team. The Nets play undersized. They play at a high pace. Pace catches up to you. And I think one thing they mentioned too, you mentioned Joe Harris being out with illness. He was still active. Crabbe had an illness on Thursday night, and it was mentioned a few of the other players were dealing with some stomach bugs. So, and I'm not taking any shots at Mexico City, but there always has been some talk about, there being issues with the water down there and things along those lines. So that could have been an issue for the Nets just not feeling 100% up to the game. But they did get out work, but they're shorthanded. So not to make excuses, they definitely could have won this game. I think one other thing that really stuck out defensively, they did not force enough turnovers. I believe the Heat only had 6 turnovers, and at the point of that game, the Heat have the highest turnover percentage in the NBA. So that was via the Nets broadcast. So that means that the Heat are turning over the ball at the highest percentage in the NBA in terms of 100 possessions.
Yeah, I think that goes to, you can talk to that, Nick, with energy. The fact that, being able to force those turnovers, get those steals, force those bad passes, It just requires energy and engagement. And I think, the Nets, as you mentioned, the fatigue in terms of playing, games quite close together certainly had an impact. And that would have an impact, even on back-to-backs. That's where you're really going to struggle to be active on the defensive end. So, we had 14 turnovers ourselves. So that's certainly when it's that lopsided, it's very unlikely you're going to win many games when you at the same time are shooting pretty poorly from the perimeter.
Yeah, especially for a team that, for the Nets really to win and get wins against solid teams. Miami's not a great team, but they are a solid team. You need to make threes. Shooting 20 under 30, anything under 30% is pretty much not acceptable for the Nets. Having no Joe Harris had an impact on that, but also guys like Acy, who's just been, like you mentioned, he doesn't have much value, and he's not hitting threes. It really hurts the team. And also the Heat had a couple guys. I think Justice Winslow hit 3 threes, and he's shooting 20% on the season. So that's just some outliers.
Yeah, I was gonna. I don't remember if I did tweet it, but I was like, when he made that second one, I'm like, you got to guard it.
There were swishes too. Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah, like it's not like his mechanics look good and like it was going in. So like, I think despite the fact, like Rondae made one as well. So if a guy who's not a known 3-point shooter starts to make them, you're probably going to start guarding him. I think our defense was a bit poor on that end, and energy, engagement, all those buzzwords can be attributed to it.
Yeah, especially for a Heat team, like I said, with that turning over the ball a lot and just not having a ton of great ball handlers, and they were out there probably their best player in Hassan Whiteside. So yeah, I think the Nets kind of missed out on one there. A 3-game winning streak would have been really nice. It would have been nice to sweep in Mexico City too, help our fan base, because you could tell the first game OKC was kind of getting a lot of the love from the crowd, but in the second game it looked like the Nets were kind of starting to build up with Mexico City fans because they won that game. They played with some grit, and they played a pretty good first half, just bad second half. But hey, young team can't win them all, but we did have the nice win on Thursday night against OKC, which was kind of a surprise. Paul George didn't play, which obviously helped, and no Grant for them as well, but we came up on top. Solid team effort, and I think the real highlight of this game, though, was the Caris LeVert and Jarrett Allen pick and roll. We saw a little in Miami, but we saw a lot in OKC game.
Yeah, LeVert himself was just outstanding. 21 point off the bench, 21 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. He was doing it all.
Zero turnovers.
0 turnovers. So that's Spencer Dinwiddie certainly having an effect on that young man. So, the pick and roll, it was just lovely. And despite the fact that OKC do have one of the best defenses in the NBA right now, we were able to get our own. It was a bit of a slugfest. No team really got into, was hot from 3 or was hot from the field. But the better team, we just outgrinded the Thunder. The Thunder always look a lot better when they start and when they're smooth and they've got so much talent on the top end. Whereas we can grind out those wins with that Brooklyn grit. We go hard. And I think, when one guy, might, have a bit of a lackluster performance or get in foul trouble, someone else will step up. And in that case, it was LeVert, and he was just outstanding.
Yeah, honestly, that was the best game of Caris LeVert's career, obviously. I think we saw this via some I can't remember which account on Twitter, but the last player to have that stat line that LeVert had with 0 turnovers was Larry Bird. So obviously great to be mentioned in a conversation with him at all. And I think that just the overall development of LeVert has been exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But the fact he was hitting Jarrett Allen too, and Jarrett Allen was doing a good job of finding the holes on the defense and getting those easy dunks. You saw this a little bit in the Heat game, is teams are starting to have to respect Jarrett Allen a lot more on the roll, because now they know he can finish the oop, he can finish the dunk. So definitely a nice asset for the Nets moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that we were able to get our 10th win, so early, whereas last year we didn't get it until March. So, we've certainly
March 9th, right?
Yeah, March 1st or March 9th, somewhere early in March. So the fact that, that was 3 months later than what it is now. So we're doing well, Nick. So we're on the up.
Yeah, exactly. As much as we want to complain about certain things and get mad about the Heat loss, we have to look at it from last year and the improvements we're already making and the development of the players. I think that's one thing, regardless, and I tweeted about this yesterday, the Nets were to lose both these games, we could still walk away being pretty happy. Caris LeVert has showed a lot. Jarrett Allen has showed a lot. Rondae continues to look great. So I think that's really something special. Also, it did help in the OKC game. Carmelo did not have a good game. Also, Russell Westbrook, like I mentioned on the NBA outlet, looks like he's not 100%. And the Nets did a good job taking advantage of that. They attacked Westbrook, they attacked Melo, and they got some easy buckets in the paint.
Yeah, definitely. And it's when Russ is stat hunting, which it sort of seems like he has been lately in the absence of Paul George. It just makes it so much easier for us, and makes him easier to defend. Predicting what he's going to be able to do. So I think Russ doing his thing, and Melo. I think RHJ defended him really well. And on the opposite end, RHJ torched him on some possessions. So yeah, we were able to really grind out a good, healthy win because certainly weren't expecting it. So the fact that we could get 1 out of 2 is, I'll take that.
Yeah, honestly, if I had to guess before, the two games, I would have picked the Heat game to win and lose the OKC. It did help Paul George was out, but I mean, I think we kind of surprised OKC a little bit, and we just played with energy the whole game and kind of gritted it out. And like you said, talk about Rondae a little bit, and I'm still kind of amazed by the improvement he has made in his game offensively. He's gone from being pretty much not much of anything on the offensive end, but to being a lockdown mid-range shooter. If you give him a foot in the mid-range from any angle, it seems like he's going to knock it down.
Yeah, Zach Lowe made a good point of his progression. The fact that he's developed so quickly in 1 year to be able to do this thing, but at the same time, for him to be a really capable player, he's really going to have to be able to hit that three, which we've seen him do in a couple of games.
Yeah, last 2 games he's hit like one here or there.
I think he needs to keep taking it just for the reps. If he doesn't make it, look, Quincy Acy's not making it. I'd almost rather right now Quincy Acy's shots go to RHJ from the perimeter, just because if he can at least get the repetition, the mechanics will come, and the repetition. You know where to shoot from. You know how much you're going to move your legs. You know how much you're going to extend. It's going to help RHJ, and it's going to add a complete other dimension to his game, because if he becomes somewhat of a 3-point threat like a Draymond, then it turns him into a bona fide very good starter. Because right now he's good, but he could turn into a very good starter with the 3-point shot.
Yeah, that's the must add. That'll separate Rondae from being a bench player to a starter.
Definitely.
If obviously he starts on the Nets right now, but in an ideal situation, he probably would need to have that 3-point shot unless you're having a center that can shoot the three. So I think spacing wise, Rondae, all he has to hit is from the corners. We don't even need him to hit from the top. If he can hit a solid number in the corners, and we're talking 33%, I'll be pretty happy with. Just where he has to get a little bit of respect, I think that could really work out, especially with the guards that we have. And the improvement we saw in his mid-range game, like you said, how fast it was in that Zach Lowe post, and his 3-point shot, it looks like you see a little bit less hitch every time. It's starting to look a little bit smoother. Watching it last year was painful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The fact that because he, you get the great thing about basketball is you get the reinforcement of seeing the ball go through the hoop. So it's like, okay, I just do what I did before. I'll do that again. So the fact that he's developing a routine, like you could compare it to, say, Andre Drummond with his free throws. He's got a routine now. It looks like RHJ is more comfortable. He's certainly not confident, but he's certainly more comfortable doing it.
Yeah. I think next thing for him also is if he can lock up his handles. I think if he can get them a little bit tighter, he's a little bit out of control sometimes, but it works out. But if he can tighten those up, because he has shown some nice passing ability, and one thing that he's done this season that's been great, he's done a great job getting to the free throw line. His herky-jerkiness, we talked about this on another pod. He does a great job selling the calls. He gets fouled, but he makes sure the ref has to make the foul call. And some of the other Nets probably need to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we all I think it might be Kevin Pelton or someone has come up with the theory, the fact that if you're a good free throw shooter, it's going to translate well to a decent 3-point percentage. And right now, I'd say RHJ is probably our best at it. So I think it's going to translate well into the future, because he's good from there, and he's got good mechanics. So I think he just needs to continue. We're still early in the season. I think he needs to take, minimum 2 a night. I'd like to see him put up 2 a night, and if he can hit one of them, so be it. If he misses the other one, if he misses both, so be it. He just needs to keep on putting them up.
Yeah, as long as they're wide open, good looks, appropriate in the shot clock, not too early, and it makes sense. There's definitely times where he can take it and he hasn't. So, we just want to see him get better. And then we'll talk about LeVert a little bit. Obviously, it's funny. We talked about him on the last pod, and we were like, what's his ceiling? And we said, fringe all-star, he'll make it a couple seasons. He's not going to be a 10-year thing. But I think all-star probably is still the same thing. But it seems like he's shown a lot more to his game just in these last 2 games in terms of passing, playmaking ability. His wraparound pass to Zeller a few times has been excellent, and I think the way he sees the floor is a lot better than I even anticipated. I always knew he had good vision, but not this great.
Yeah, I think the length, the calmness that he's showing in these past two games, I think it's being reflective of sort of without D'Lo and Lin. It's almost a morphed into Spencer Dinwiddie's sort of offense. He runs it, and then LeVert sort of comes in and piggybacks off that, and he's doing a perfect job of it. It's going to really, really help going into the future to have such a wide array of a skill set. We mentioned that stat line, the fact that Larry Bird was one of the only ones to ever do it. If you can do so many different things on the floor, you're just so much more valuable as a player. You're hard to defend if you're a capable offensive player. You're able to get in out in transition, which I think Caris has got a great strength there when he shows poise. And I think the key word for him is being able to use that poise. And I think he's been doing that a lot more lately. He's not forcing things, and he's looking like a more mature, capable player.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head when you said poise. In the pick and roll, he is in so much more control. He's realized that if he slows down sometimes, it's better than going fast. Because he's done a great job, and he's always done this in the past, is getting his defender off balance. But in the past, he's kind of not known what to do, and he's getting himself in trouble. Now he's starting to realize the situation, get a better feel for the team, and understanding where everyone's at. And like you said, that length and the ability to see over players, I think, is really helping him. And I'm really excited to see what D'Angelo Russell and Caris LeVert, backcourt could be like, because it feels like they're going to complement each other so well with the fact that LeVert has that playmaking ability, and it can let D'Lo be more of a natural scorer that he likes to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out tremendously for us. And we mentioned in the last pod, Nick, the fact that, having a guy like a Spencer Dinwiddie who is just so capable and so calm and, almost complements D'Lo to a T, and Caris does as well. It's just a perfect trio. So it's going to be very exciting for when D'Lo does come back. But, there's no timetable on his return yet, but, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think you mentioned it looked like it would probably be a few months when you did the research on the injury. I think we touched on this a little bit, but Quincy Acy has been harsh. His minutes have been bad. He has not looked confident. When he's shooting his three, he has that impact on the floor, spacing the floor. But right now, he doesn't look confident. He doesn't even want to shoot the three ball. It's a hesitation. He has sloppy handles. He tries to drive. He gets himself in trouble. It's just a real mess out there. What do you think the Nets need to do about that? Should they talk to Acy, try to figure that out, or they should try to find a way to give his minutes elsewhere?
I think it's going to be situational, Nick. If we have, adding in a guy like a Nick Stauskas and Jahlil Okafor, naturally his minutes are going to go down. And I think Quincy knows that. He knows that he isn't a key part of the next Brooklyn championship. So I think he's understanding of that, sort of like, Trevor Booker in the sense, he wasn't upset at all by the trade. He showed great character, and we know that is what he is. Quincy just needs to realize that he's going to have his moments, and he's also going to have his bad moments. I think, he needs to continue to have the confidence. I think it doesn't help when the team as a whole is shooting so poorly, because you're not going to really go to Quincy Acy for a step back bucket or just like a hot three when you need it. Like you go to Spencer or Crab or Joe for that. So I think the team as a whole from the perimeter is reflective of Quincy's recent struggles. So hopefully he can improve and the team can improve with it.
Yeah. I think obviously with Booker, losing minutes at the four, I think the Nets probably are going to have to do something where they play Jarrett Allen a little bit more at the four. We saw that. Yeah, we saw it a little bit last night. I think it definitely could work because they played Booker and Allen together, and Okafor has a little bit more offensive skill set. Obviously, we're still kind of waiting to see on that Jarrett Allen three. Also, one thing I wouldn't mind, this depends on the play of Stauskas and also, getting maybe Joe Harris some more minutes, playing DeMarre Carroll a little bit more at the four.
Yeah,
Harris or Crab a little bit more. Then when D'Angelo's back, it all kind of worked out. I envisioned that a little bit more going to the season. I thought it would be more Carroll at the four. We've seen him more at the three, but I think at the four later in the season, spacing wise, it could really work out because he's a tough guy, and it's obviously he's getting up there in age, so having a slower guy to defend might help him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think alongside if you're playing him and Okafor, they could develop a nice little tandem there because DeMarre's he's no scrub from the 3-point arc.
Exactly.
So I think that's for spacing purposes, which you're a huge fan of, Nick. I think it certainly works. And, Jarrett and Okafor, that's, despite the fact that both of them aren't, amazing perimeter shooters, we know we raved about Jarrett's first three-pointer the other night. But, the fact that it's two young foundational pieces that could turn into something really exciting. I'd much rather see Okafor and Allen than, Okafor and Mozgov, or Okafor and Zeller, or Mozgov and Allen. You want to see the young guys getting the reps. No hate though for Tyler Zeller, because he's been doing some really nice things lately, especially in the pick and roll, as we mentioned before with LeVert and Allen, him and Dinwiddie especially.
Yeah, he's been a true professional. I don't think you'll be able to play Mozgov, Okafor, Zeller together at any points. So I think Allen's going to have to probably play more minutes at the 4, which could hurt the team. I would love to see a lineup at some point in the future, maybe a Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, Allen Crabbe, DeMarre Carroll, whoever you want to throw in at center, maybe Jarrett Allen, Okafor, whoever. I think spacing-wise, that's some really good three-point shooting, having Dinwiddie, Harris, Crabbe, and Carroll. And I would probably maybe throw Allen out there to kind of tighten up the D a little bit too. That'd be fun to watch.
Definitely. And I think with the fact that we've got, extra bodies now, our rotations were limited in Mexico just purely because of the fact of injuries and the trade. So with, the incoming of Okafor and Stauskas, it's certainly going to help with our rotations and with our experimentation that we're all for, because, we're projected to win about 35 games this year. And if we can, get some good play out of a lot of players, and turn them into assets, or to turn them into prospect pieces, then that's going to be all for the benefit of the team as a whole.
Exactly. So any improvement is a benefit, and we're still going to be getting back one of our young studs, like we said, D'Angelo soon. I'm really excited to see Okafor play. We really don't know exactly when he's going to be his first game or how much minutes he's going to play in his first game, but we'll see what happens. I expect to see him a little bit Tuesday, but I don't know for how long.
I love that he picked the number 4, Nick. It's beautiful. It is. The man in me who loves the shitty dad jokes. It's perfect. Like, it's gonna work so much wonders for the Brooklyn Buzz. And if you're not a fan of shitty dad humor, then I would tune out very soon, because we are going to be doing me personally, I'm going to be doing some horrible puns about Jaleel, and hopefully, I'm very excited about it. If I were in Brooklyn, if it's a home game, and if I were over there, I'd certainly go and check it out. But hopefully, a lot of our fans can.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pumped to see it, and we'll see what happens. And as always, you can listen to the Brooklyn Buzz on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, and OTGBasketball.com. Thank you for hopping on, Jack. And as always, thank you everybody for listening, and have a great night.